My parents contacted me after 10 years of no contact and are forcing me to save my golden child, twin sister, from debt, even sacrificing my business to finance it. Hi. So, 10 days ago, my family contacted me after 10 years of not speaking with me. I am 31, a female, and at the age of 21, shortly after graduating from college, I opted to cut ties with and move away from my family. The reason for this was the difference in how they treated me compared to my sister. I have a twin sister. Let us call her Rebecca. She is 12 minutes older than me, and for some reason my family has always treated her more than they did me. She has long been regarded as the family's golden child. I'm not sure why, but my family has always preferred her over me, even if I've accomplished more than she has. I've always been the superior student, athlete, and even in fields where she claims to be an expert, such as painting. You name it. I'm better than her at this. And the reason for this is because as a child I was constantly trying to outdo her, believing that it would make my parents like me more. In fact, it made them dislike me even more. Because to them it appeared that I was doing it on purpose to bring my sister down. It wasn't like that. I simply wanted them to show me the same love and affection that I saw Rebecca receive, but never me. They were always supportive of her and enrolled her in whatever classes she wanted. And she's always had my folks wrapped around her finger. For me, it was quite different. Every time I asked for something, I was advised not to be entitled or spoiled. Even in college, she said she wanted to take a year, which evolved into 3. She never went to college, thus she doesn't have a degree. On the other hand, was admitted into a prominent business school since I had high grades and needed financial assistance from my parents to fund my college tuition. However, they informed me that I would have to take out a student loan and pay it off myself in the future because they did not believe they needed to sponsor me, even when I became 18. I thought that was extremely insulting, but I needed them to help me with the loans, so I didn't say anything. I had recognized that they would never love me as much as they adored Rebecca, so I simply accepted my fate. I didn't maintain in touch with them while in college and only recently returned home for the holidays, occasionally. Even then, I wouldn't talk to them much because after high school, I'd emotionally distanced myself from my parents in order to avoid being harmed repeatedly. When I was about to graduate, I invited them to the ceremony, but they never responded. I did everything. I called them, wrote them additional emails, and even considered visiting them. But by then, I'd already tried contacting and messaging them, and they hadn't responded. So I assumed that they simply did not want to attend. It wasn't until after the ceremony that I learned from a few relatives that they would be unable to attend, because my graduation ceremony coincided with my sister's first day of school. Of course, her first day at 21 was considerably more significant than my graduation celebration, so they couldn't leave her alone that day. It was odd because she was not even going to a respectable college. She was attending painting lessons at a nearby community college, which was only a half-hour away from our home. I believe it was the day I learned that my existence was meaningless to them, and they would prefer that I never contact them again. The message was loud and clear. It had always been. But that day I realized I didn't need to pretend to have a family to soothe myself. In fact, not having a family was probably preferable to having one like this. So I just stopped speaking with my parents, blocked them everywhere, and was done with it. I did the same for my sister because Rebecca and I had never had a good connection due of the love and devotion she received from my parents. She always felt she was superior to me, despite the fact that I had ample proof to the contrary. I was better than her in every way. I believe she knew, which is why she was so uneasy about me and constantly attempted to bring me down. Well, the joke was on her because I am now in a considerably better situation than she is in her life. She was usually rather arrogant and smug about everything, so we've never really gotten along, and I didn't regret barring her and cutting everyone out of my life after that. I didn't have much financial support, and I had to worry about paying off my college debt, so I accepted the first job offer that came my way. Since then, I've been working hard to prove myself and show everyone that I'm capable of doing it on my own. I don't need my parents to survive. Things were rough at first, but I had a lot of wonderful friends from college and school in general who were always supportive and had my back. And now I'm in a really good financial and mental situation. I've been working for a vegan product firm for the past 5 years and am now thinking about launching my own business. Despite the fact that I am not vegan, I am quite interested in the vegan lifestyle and have been researching it extensively for the past few years. I believe there is a large market to be explored, so I have been thinking about starting my own business for the past several months and have spoken with a couple of people who are prepared to join me. So the goal was to work on my business model and plan everything out over the next few months, and then resign my job once I had a couple of investors on board to start my own firm. But then, last week, my relatives informed me that my father was on his deathbed and that I needed to come see him. I hadn't spoken to anyone from my family in 10 years, so I was astonished when they reached out to me. But when I found out that my father had been battling cancer for the past 3 years, I quit everything and went back home. It was already too late, since he was in critical condition and there was no turning back. So, in a last-ditch effort to make things right with me, or perhaps simply to chat about my sister, they invited me to visit him one last time. When I saw him, I almost burst into tears in the hospital since I'd never seen my father like that before, and my mother hugged me, which was incredibly terrible for a while. I had forgotten everything from the past, and all I worried about was whether my father would be able to make it or not. Rebecca was also present, but I did not communicate with her because she made no effort to talk to me. She had just made a face and had been sitting in the corner throughout my visit. My mother spoke to me and informed me about my father, but she was the only one who pretended I wasn't even present, which I found very annoying. So I didn't talk to her. Anyway, I don't like her and have no interest in what she's up to, so I thought it was perfectly okay for us to talk to each other, and no one else in the family seemed to worry because they understood the type of relationship I had with these folks. This was only 1 week and 2 days after my father passed away. Everyone knew he wasn't going to make it. So my mother and sister had already made funeral preparations, and it didn't take long to complete everything. So I was able to return home. But, regrettably, I was forced to agree to something I didn't want to do before my father died on the second day of my stay, and Rebecca had gone home because she was fatigued at one point. So it was just my parents and I in the hospital room, and they began chatting to me about my profession. I felt it was really innocent, and I didn't think much of it because my father was on his deathbed. I didn't think they could be up to anything sinister at that time, so I told them that I had been working for a very successful company for the previous 2 years and was doing well. They listened to me for a while, complimented me, and then started telling me about how horrible Rebecca was. They claimed she dropped out of community college after a few months and didn't bother returning. She didn't have a degree, and her grades in school were not particularly good. As a result, she was unable to precisely explain the gap. She didn't even attend any college, so she did nothing till she was 25. Then my parents began urging her to obtain a job, so she eventually did. But she was never able to last more than 3 or 4 months. She'd come home after a few months and tell our parents she'd quit her work because it was too much and they weren't paying her enough. It didn't even make sense, considering they were paying her the correct amount. She was working low-wage jobs because she lacked a degree, and she was unwilling to put in the time and effort required to work hard and advance up the career ladder. None of it made logic, and they had been working hard to convince her that her arguments would not hold up in the real world. So they had been arguing a lot with Rebecca and trying to make her independent. But she didn't appear to care about the future at all. She was just not serious about anything and treated everything carelessly. My parents tried to talk to her about it, but she just blew them off. And she resigned her previous work 6 months ago and was sitting at home with nothing to do. They told me that they were very concerned about her, and they wanted me to be the one to watch out for her, because after my father died, my mother was too old, and she would have to consider her own retirement as well, because she was only 1 year away from retiring, and she couldn't bring herself to keep working to support her daughter, who should be able to support herself by now. To be honest, I had no idea how to reply to anything they were saying because my father was suffering, and I didn't want to be the one to break his heart after 10 years of no contact. At the time, I was experiencing a wide range of emotions. I tried to convince my folks that I was planning to establish my own business. This was not the best time for me to take on such a duty because I knew Rebecca was a liability and had little interest in making money on her own. She was perfectly fine with living off of other people's money, which is what she had been doing thus far. The only difference was that before this, my parents had taken care of her, primarily my father, because he earned more money than my mother. But now my father was handing the torch to me, telling me that I needed to keep an eye out for my sister. I understood why he wanted me to take on the duty, but I tried to explain that it was not possible for me at the time because I was preparing to resign my job and establish my own business, so all of my money would go towards that. But my father informed me that they had already spent a lot of money on his health care and medical expenses, and even after that, he wanted my mother to be comfortable, which was his priority. He knew I'd be there to look out for Rebecca, so he was banking on me. Then he coerced and misled me into committing to take care of Rebecca's future. He made me promise that I would put my business aspirations on wait until Rebecca was at least somewhat financially secure, and that I would look out for her and have her back until then. I had no idea how long it would take, but I said yes since I didn't want to turn down a man on his deathbed. No matter what he had done to me in the past, I was uncomfortable with it. I assume that was silly of me, but I don't think anyone else in my position would have reacted differently. And if someone was able to stand up to their parents in that situation, I have to say that they must be quite strong, but I am not. And I just agreed to it. I was not happy about it, but I had to do it since it appeared that my father was going to die soon, and I couldn't say no to his final wish. They also told me exactly what it entailed, because Rebecca was in a relationship with the guy from school and was planning to visit him because he worked in another city, but was still in the same state. And I couldn't understand why they couldn't see each other more frequently. Because that is not Rebecca. At the very least, Jared had a job and could come to see her, but they were traveling huge distances. So, as it happens, I know the guy she was dating and the type of person he is. So I understood right once that being engaged with him was bad for her. That night, my parents told me that Rebecca had been chatting to this guy for the past 2 years, largely online. But he had come back to visit for a couple of weeks during the holidays, and it was the only time they had met. This man, let's call him Jared, doesn't have the best ideals when it comes to ladies at school. He was infamous for flirting with any lady he could talk to, and his high school girlfriends had caught him cheating on multiple occasions. I didn't keep track of him after we graduated, but I did learn from a couple of high school classmates that he had previously been divorced for infidelity. I'm not sure what his problem was, but I knew he wasn't someone I'd trust personally. I attempted to explain this to my parents as well, but they said Rebecca seemed to like him, and they had seen them together during his travels back home, and they believed they were meant to be together since they seemed so lovely and in love. I already had a horrible feeling about this because they were going long distance, which meant that it opened up all kinds of opportunities for him to cheat without fear of being detected, since he was in another city entirely. And Rebecca had no idea about this. My parents told me that they wanted me to pay for her flight tickets to go and see him in the next few weeks, because they knew that she would be pretty weak, and only after our father passed away, because they wanted her to have somebody, because my mother would be too busy with the legal formalities after my father's death, and I would obviously have to go back to work, she'd need someone by her side, and they wanted it to be her lover. I did my best to describe the type of guy he was, and warn them of the repercussions. They were confident that Rebecca and Jared would marry in the future, and they kept telling me that I had to take care of these things when my father died, and that I would have to pay for the wedding in the future as well. They were quite confident that Jared was the perfect guy for Rebecca, and I couldn't persuade them otherwise, so I just agreed, because it seemed senseless to attempt to convince them that he wasn't the appropriate guy. After my father died, I approached Rebecca after the burial and told her all I knew about Jared, then tried to warn her of the repercussions. I'd been aware of Jared's Casanova behavior for a long time, and I didn't think she should be involved with him, but like my parents, she ignored my warnings and informed me that he had changed, and she knew it. She told me they were in love, and she knew he would never cheat on her or do anything to hurt him, so she wasn't concerned about my concerns. She thanked me for being concerned about her, but then told me that she would only appreciate the cash assistance and that I didn't have to be her parents or try to have any kind of emotional tie with her. It simply wasn't required. That was kind of harsh and hurtful on that particular day. After that chat, I determined to do precisely what she recommended. My father had just urged me to watch out for her finances. He had not spoken anything about the emotional component. So, in some ways, she was correct, and I opted to keep an emotional distance from my family because I had more important things to do and needed to focus on my profession. After the funeral, I returned here, and it's been a week. 2 days after the funeral, my mother begged me to purchase travel tickets for Rebecca to visit Jared, and I did. I didn't bother checking in on anyone after that because I became preoccupied with my work. However, yesterday, I received an unexpected visit at my door. Rebecca had taken the bus from Jared's city to mine because she was too humiliated to phone me, but she also did not want to return home. She could afford bus tickets, and that's how she got here. She arrived fatigued and in tears, having traveled for 10 hours as I opened the door for her. I was perplexed as to what was going on, and as soon as I opened the door, she burst into tears and informed me that I was correct about everything. She informed me that she had planned to surprise Jared, so when she arrived at his house, it was fairly unexpected, and he had been spending time with another girl there. When she arrived, she confronted him about it right away and inquired who it was, to which he instructed her to mind her own business. He then explained that they were not exclusive and that he was free to do anything he pleased when he wasn't at home with her. Thus, she had no right to inquire about his life here. That evidently irritated or annoyed her because, in her mind, they had been together for 2 years and she was entirely committed to him, even considering marrying him. So that was quite hurtful. They ended up having a huge argument in his hallway. And reportedly, in a fit of rage, she lifted her duffel bag and whacked him with it. Unfortunately, one of the bag's chains got him in the brow, causing him to bleed heavily. She panicked and fled. She got to the bus stop and caught the first bus she could find, which brought her here, and now she wants my aid. She told me she was ready to learn how to be independent and restore her life, and I needed to be the one to teach her, because I had been independent for nearly 10 years. So she assumed that there was no one better to teach her the ropes in my field of work and give her a job. She told me that she knew I was preparing to start my own firm and hoped that I would give her the opportunity to work there as a partner rather than an employee. It was just too much for me to handle, so before I agreed on anything, I asked her whether she knew whether Jared had decided to bring charges against her. Since if he had, I would not have wanted anything to do with her since what she had done was terrible. Whatever Jared was doing, she had no right to get physically violent with him, and it was grounds for filing charges against her, even if she had managed to flee the scene. He could still find out and arrest her for it. In that case, I didn't want anything to do with her because I wouldn't be cleaning up her mess anymore. I asked her about it. That's when she revealed the truth, telling me that she hadn't actually escaped, but he had filed charges against her, and she had to pay a large price as restitution for what she did, which is why she was here. I told her I couldn't help her and told her to go home since I didn't want to be involved in any of this. She became really furious when I mentioned that. I reminded her of the promise I made to my father before he died, but I informed her that the commitment no longer mattered because it was clear to me that she was an idiot who would never do the right thing, so I wasn't going to be there to clean up after her. I simply wanted to create my own business, and I did not want her to join me because she was a complete liability. I told her that the least I could do for her was buy her tickets back home, but after that she was on her own, and I was going back to having no contact with my family because this was too much. It had only been 1 week, and she had already made tremendous mistakes. None of this would have happened if she had simply listened my warning and avoided that guy, which she chose not to do, even after what I told her. So I was angry by everything, and I told her I was going to order her airplane tickets so she could simply go to the airport and wait there. Instead, I didn't want her wasting my time. I had a lot of work to catch up with. She couldn't fight with me because I had already booked her tickets, so she took a cab to the airport a few minutes later. I assumed that was the end of it, but my mother is clearly upset about what I did. She believes that I should have been gentler to my sister and took her on as a business partner, given her desire to clean up her act. This was an opportunity for me to help others, but I turned it down because I was too selfish. At least that's what my mother believes. I don't believe I was selfish at all. In fact, I believe I was quite helpful because I booked the flight tickets to return home. Obviously, she now needs to work out how to pay Jared's fine, but that's no longer my concern, given that she was the one who chose to strike him and visit him, despite my warning. My mother is really upset with me and is continuously phoning and messaging me to remind me of the promise I made to my father and to inform me that I am not keeping it, the way she expected me to. So I'm responsible for refusing to clean up the mess that my sister has made, despite a promise I made to my father on his deathbed. Update 1. Hi. So it's been 3 days since my sister came to see me and I sent her away. My mother had been attempting to contact me for a time, but I decided to block her because it was getting on my nerves. I do not owe it to anyone to assist them. Yes, I made a vow to my father, but I was tricked and bullied into doing so. It wasn't something I particularly wanted to do. I believe I made that plain enough, and the majority of the responses stated that it was extremely manipulative of my parents to contact me just when my father was on his deathbed. Even then, it was evident that they only wanted me to come and see them so they could be certain that I would help Rebecca. Later, when my father had left, even as he was leaving, he coaxed me into doing something for the family's golden child. It's truly unbelievable. They just cared about her and me, regardless of our relationship. He was still my father, and it pained to see him die. But I'm not sure how to feel about it anymore. I don't miss him because I didn't have a good relationship with any of them, and I haven't contacted them in 10 years. But I do feel let down and disappointed. It was my error to believe that things might change between all of us, or that my family would ever care about anything other than my sister. I suppose not. That will never happen. I can care about a lot of things other than my sister, and I intend to do so. Whatever happens, I'm going to focus on building my own business right now. Nobody is going to stop me. I'd already lost focus once, which was not good for me. I am not going to let this happen again. Update 2. Hi. Rebecca reached out to me today. I suppose I had neglected to block her. She texted me that she had paid off the fine and didn't need my help anymore. She also told me that my mother was very disappointed and did not want to see me again. I guess that's fine with me. I did not want to see them again either. They simply wanted me for my money, not for who I was as an individual, and they would never regret how they treated me throughout my life. And I knew it. So after reading that message, I didn't even bother to respond and instead blocked her. I was done with it. Update 3. Hey, it's been a few months and I just wanted to give you a little update on how my business venture is progressing. The business model is virtually ready and every investor I've spoken with has expressed a strong interest in my venture. I guess I'll quit my work and submit my resignation letter in a few days since I'm finally ready for the next chapter. I am once again without communication with my family, and things have never been better for me. To be honest, I believe that not contacting him again was the smartest move I could have taken, and this business is going to become my new family.